Welcome to ¿Qué pasa? HSIs, a podcast dedicated to everything Hispanic serving institutions. I'm your host, Doctora Gina Ann Garcia, bringing you the news on what's happening in HSIs. Join us as we explore the history and evolution of HSIs, culturally relevant and liberatory practices, current and emerging research with HSIs, and the policies that shape servingness. Saludos, HSI familia, and welcome to ¿Qué pasa? HSIs. Today, we are talking to Jacki Black, who serves as the Director of Hispanic Initiatives and Diversity and Inclusion Educational Programming at Marquette University. In this role, Jacki leads the university's HSI initiatives. In addition to increasing Latinx enrolling to at least 25% of the undergraduate student body, her work entails enhancing the educational experience of campus climate for underrepresented students. She was also the founding chairperson of the HSI Network of Wisconsin. Hailing from a working class background, Jacki strongly believes in the power of education as a path to upward mobility. She earned a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from the University of Chicago, a master's degree in education from St. Xavier University, and is currently a PhD candidate in the Educational Policy and Leadership program at Marquette University. She's joined by Alberto Maldonado, who is also here to talk to us about his work with HSI-NOW. He's the director of Roberto Hernández Center at the University of Wisconsin Milwaukee. He also serves as a special assistant to the Vice Chancellor for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Since 2016, he has co-led the Chancellor's Committee for Hispanic Student Initiatives with the intention to grow and expand opportunities for Latinx students at UWM, engage with the community, and implement commitments made by the Chancellor. Alberto has 25 plus years of service at the university and has championed numerous initiatives in the areas of pre-college, community outreach, admissions, multicultural enrollment, and academic advising. He is a two-time graduate of the University of Wisconsin Milwaukee with a bachelor's in fine arts and a master's of science with a concentration in cultural foundations of education. On a personal note, I've been part of the HSI movement in Wisconsin since 2016, working closely with Jacki, Alberto, and other members of the HSI-NOW community. I have a special place in my heart for the very cold Milwaukee area that these folks help to make feel much warmer. I'm so excited to have y'all here today on ¿Qué pasa? HSIs, where we talk about all things HSIs. But first, we're going to talk about what brings you both to HSI work. So we're going to start with Alberto. If you can go ahead and tell us about your servingness journey.
Oh, wow. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me and Jacki here on this space, which I enjoy tremendously by being a fan and a consumer of your content. So thank you for the invitation and for elevating the work that we're doing here in the Midwest and Milwaukee area, where people may not think that there's Latinos, but yes, we are serving them. I think, when I think about servingness, my journey begins on how myself as a student navigating a new system here in the U.S. Migrated from Puerto Rico in 1989. Had to go through English language process of learning a new language and mastering the language to some degree, to really landing in the steps of the institution that I have been working now for over 25 years, and really being a recipient of great customer service, but more so leaning on and sort of standing in the shoulders of a lot of mentors and a lot of great people who saw the potential and who remove barriers for me as I was navigating my own academic journey. So it was those seeds that were sort of planted in me, right, that equip me with what I today I'm able to exercise with students who look like me in terms of their journey, and so for me it's been 25 years of really exercising what I experienced myself, what in my community is highly valued as well. So that's where my journey begins, and now I find myself in a position with colleagues and my staff and people and partners in the community where I have the ability to bring a lot of that together and scale the work that we do in serving students and serving others.
Awesome. Thank you for kicking us off with that. We'll go ahead and turn it over to Jacki.
Well, first of all, like Alberto, I'm really excited to be here. I just want to say how much I appreciate you having us on your podcast. It's been so great to have you as a co-conspirator on this HSI journey these past 7 years or so. Just really excited to nerd out with you today. So, my journey is a little different from Alberto and probably most of the folks that you bring on to the podcast. As a white person growing up in a very segregated area, issues related to diversity were not on my radar at all during my formative years. But as a person growing up in poverty, I was hyper attuned to issues of equity and justice. And so when my journey took me to live and learn and work on the south side of Chicago, I started to understand how those issues of race and class kind of intersected. I also understood that it was my education that was the thing that was helping to propel me out of the cycle of intergenerational poverty. And so it became a really deeply personal vocation for me to become that person who could do the same for others, who could help others, as Alberto had mentioned, like the folks that gave him a leg up. There were so many people along my pathway who did the same. So after college, I started teaching. I worked in K-12 settings, and I was also living and working with Latinx folks and serving minoritized students. So one of the main places that I spent a lot of time teaching was at Marquette High School, which is an all-boys Catholic school here in Milwaukee. It's a Jesuit school located in the city, and it serves a lot of different kinds of students from all different socioeconomic and racial backgrounds. And I started working with their Heritage Speakers program. I taught Spanish. We called it Native Speakers there. And at the time when I started, there was about 8% Latino students. And most of those guys found their way either into my native speaker classes or into the homeroom that I ran, which was called Orgullo Latino. Because the school was still predominantly white, the native speakers classes in Orgullo kind of became this like oasis for the students. We formed this really strong community. The classes I taught were not just around Spanish language, but also around like history and stories and poetry. And they're really designed to empower students with knowledge around their own heritage. And same thing with Orgullo. We did lots of things to support students, but also to bring their culture into the school. So over time, I got to know their families. My work extended to family support, community connections, getting connected to the feeder schools, bringing young alums back to interpret at parent-teacher conferences, helping our undocumented students navigate college admissions, things like that. And in fact, it was way back then that I met Alberto. He was already working at UW Milwaukee in admissions and then in the Roberto Hernández Center, and he became this like really important connector for our students to his campus. So all this to say, I really worked collaboratively with a lot of folks, both at my school and in the community, to make sure that the students and the families that we served felt a sense of support, but also a sense of belonging. And so in a way, I'd like to think that I was engaged in Latinx Servingness before that was even a thing. And as a side note, kind of a happy side effect of this work was that over the 10 years I was at Marquette High, the percentage of Latino students who attended there doubled, which I think is a testament to the idea that if you serve them well, they will come. So fast forward, one day I saw a press release from Marquette University saying that they decided that they wanted to become an HSI. And this was back in 2016. And I was like, what's HSI? And the more I looked into this, the more I was like, oh, that sounds like what I do already. I really loved my work at Marquette High, but I was really excited to think about the ways that I might be able to contribute to transformation on a bigger stage. I didn't know anything about working in higher ed, but I had learned a lot from the young men I taught at Marquette High, and I felt like I had something to contribute. So I threw my hat in the ring, and I've been at Marquette University ever since.
Wow, thank you both for the journey. I love it. I love hearing people's journeys. And despite you saying, Jacki, your journey felt different than other folks, I always find threads. I know y'all listen, so always find threads. But I love that y'all, you kind of, most people go back to like pre even college, it's like servingness is ingrained in us in very different ways.
Yeah.
Through community, right? And through people that come into our lives and whatnot. So thank you all for those, just to get to know you a little bit better. And y'all talk about Jacki, you were talking about language a lot. And I always think about Alberto, your email, it cracks me up because it says on the bottom, it says, hablo mucho español. I'm always like, all right, not even just a little bit of Spanish, but a lot of Spanish. And so I
Well,
love the focus. What were you gonna say?
no, and I'm glad you mentioned the idea of community and family and people who go way back, and it
Hmm.
just made me think about family, right? I think of my grandmother, I think of my mom, how they take in people into our
Hmm.
homes and in the barrio, or in the community, and they served. And the time you're not necessarily paying attention, but indirectly it's impacting your formation. And I think I have to credit my ancestors and my parents, and my the work ethics, the you know giving without expecting anything in return, sharing
Hmm.
a meal, all these little things that today we call volunteering or service learning or anything like that. They were
Hmm.
doing them before we even had a title for those things. And so
Hmm.
those are the things that I think have helped me personally, and in my
Hmm.
journey of serving others, because I'm doing it uh, as a byproduct of what was instilled in me. So
Hmm. Absolutely. And y'all have mentioned community so many times already. I can't wait for us to talk a little bit more about that because I know that's such a core piece of y'all's work is to be really committed to community, right? And working with people. And you both have talked about that already too. So we'll talk about that. But let's get into HSI now, or the HSI Network of Wisconsin. I have been working with y'all in the HSI network, particularly you, Jacki, right, for quite some time. And I think that it's so phenomenal the kind of work you're doing. So I want to share it. I wanted to invite y'all into the podcast to share what y'all are doing in Milwaukee area in Wisconsin, because I think it's so important. So let's just start with that. What is HSI Now? What is its origin story, and what's its purpose? I think, Jacki, you're gonna start us off.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk about HSI now because I think this is one of the great secrets of HSI work in the Midwest is the kind of work that we're doing here in Wisconsin. So the HSI Network of Wisconsin came about in this really very organic way. When I started working at Marquette U with this mandate to figure out, how to become an HSI and all that that entailed, Marquette wasn't even an emerging HSI yet. And so I started looking for models for what this transition would look like. But the more I looked, the more I realized that mostly institutions become HSIs by, geographic accident rather than through any intentional efforts. And looking at our geographic context, when people think of Wisconsin or the Midwest in general, at least outside of the Chicago area, we're not in the same position as like places like California or Texas in terms of raw numbers of Latinx folks. But what we do have is growth. So if you look at the data, particularly in and around Milwaukee, there has been an explosion in our Latinx community. There was a study done in 2016 that showed that in the previous 25 years, the Hispanic population had tripled in the area. If you look at, for example, Milwaukee Public Schools, if they were a college campus, they would be an HSI. So the pipeline was there, just not like a pathway. And Marquette was looking at this and thinking, we should try to figure this out. How do we make, better connections with this community? But we weren't the only ones, right? There were these other campuses that were either just on the brink of becoming HSIs, or like Marquette had announced that they were striving to become HSIs. And one of those places was UW Milwaukee. So I reached out to my friend Alberto and we started talking. And then we reached out to other folks. Shout out to Dr. Wilma Bonaparte from Milwaukee Area Technical College, Ruth Lopez at Alverno, Gabriela Barbosa at Mount Mary. One of the benefits of living in a place we call it small walkie, like to call ourselves, is that, there's 1 or 2 degrees of separation. Everybody knows each other. So we're having all these side conversations. What are you doing over there? What do your numbers look like? We're having these challenges. How are you navigating these things? And finally, I was like, we should just get everyone together in a room. And so that happened in spring of 2019. And that was basically the birth of HSI Now. We were each muddling through on our separate campuses. And we decided, you know what, we can learn from each other, but we can also lean on each other, which I think is a really important aspect of our network. And our mission really reflects that. What we're trying to do as a collective is to bring folks together from colleges and universities across the state and work collaboratively to create pathways from the Latinx community to higher ed. We also create forums of education, to educate ourselves and others. We create tools and frameworks that will help us advocate for Servingness efforts on our respective campuses. So it's really an organization built on the principles of mutual support.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And for shouting out all the original folks that you've been working with in Small Walkie. I'd never heard of that, but I do know a lot of those folks that you shouted out. And what a cool idea to think about bringing people together when y'all are already like doing this kind of work and coming up with something more foundational. I did find a report that had some of those data you were talking about. I don't know if y'all have any updated stuff, but I think that is fascinating, right? About the number of, to your point, Alberto, is like some of us. I remember I was in this space of like, don't really think about Wisconsin as a place where there are Latinos at. So to see those numbers, right, and you just gave it to us, I think is important too. To right, think about like this is the population. You have to have the foresight to know that like we are going to serve this population into the future, right? What are we going to do to get ready for it now?
Yeah,
And I think,
no,
go ahead, Alberto.
yeah, the growth and the exciting part that Jacki, mentions is, we started with 4 or 5 institutions, sort of dancing around this idea of how to create spaces, create resources, feed off of each other's ideas, to now 13 member institutions that are part of this network. And I can help but to think that it will continue to grow, and not to say that everyone is at the same place and time in terms of numbers or resources, or their initiatives may look completely different. The beauty of this is that everybody is aspiring to really improve the conditions on how they serve Latinx students on their campuses, and that I think is at the core of this group.
For sure. And I think that goes right into like the next question, which I know you're going to answer for us. What is the significance of starting this kind of network with institutions that are emerging? I think that's the really fascinating thing I think about y'all's network is that you all came into this at the emerging state. It wasn't like you had already all reached HSI. You had HSI grants directors. It is very much in this emerging, or even as I call striving, right? That even
Right.
pre 15% is like really striving to get to HSI. So what's the significance of starting so early rather than waiting until everybody's in HSI?
Well, in my opinion, I think it's really an opportunity to create, ideas, resources that perhaps did not existed before for Latinx students on all of our respective institutions. It opens up, a great opportunity for dialogue. We get to share information. We get to, more effectively talk about what's working, what are the challenges, what do those challenges look like, what those opportunities look like in our respective institutions. And I think the byproduct of coming together and creating these networks of communication and opportunities to sort of build community across the state is that we begin to look at this through the lens of community. I think we begin to move away from this competitive nature of, oh, we're all recruiting the same students. No, I'm not going to share with you what we're doing because you're going to steal all of our students. We're looking at it through the lens of our community needs us. and our students can benefit tremendously if we organize our efforts, if we align some of the best practices in a way, and then arriving at a place where we all realize that we all each of our institutions are unique in what we offer, and that students are gonna find community in all of our institutions, particularly when most of our students commute to campus. So what are those communities look like on our campuses? What are the resources that exist there? And so rather than looking at ourselves as individuals and not willing to share what's working, what's not working. So I think that's the byproduct of coming together, of really organizing our efforts, sharing ideas. When an announcement is made, we're quick to send an email to the entire network and say, "Hey, did you hear about this opportunity?" Or Gina Garcia is going to be speaking, doing a webinar, and really expanding our knowledge base, because we all come at this work at different levels of understanding the work, right? And so I think it's very important that we as a collective realize the importance of moving away from the competitive nature of recruiting or enrolling students, but more so seeing that our community is growing. The community has great need. Families have such an amount of barriers when it comes to language, when it comes to understanding the college lingo, when understanding affordability, that it helps us become a stronger community when we all understand the information at the same level and in the same way.
Oh, I love the idea of not competing, because higher ed is like, just reinforces, right? And almost encourages us to feel like we're constantly competing with each other. So when you said that, I was like, oh, that was very powerful, right? Think like we're not in competition. We're actually here to serve the students. Like if you're going to put students first, then you're not in competition. And then I started thinking about even your network, and I know the different institutions. Y'all are super unique. I mean, you got like large public 2 years, you got mid-sized
Yes,
Jesuit, you got tiny little private women's colleges, right? I mean, they're very distinct. So to think you're in competition is wild anyways, right? Because like you have your distinct roles in higher ed in general.
correct.
So yeah, so I love that. It's just so beautiful to hear, right? That y'all have been doing this work, and in this way that we're gonna be in community together with and for our students. So what kind of milestones has HSI Now met, and what kind of events have y'all sponsored so far, Jacki?
Yeah, so I think Alberto mentioned, when we started in 2019, HSI Now had just 5 institutions, and now we have 13 active member institutions. And I think it's important to note that it's not just in the Milwaukee area where like the largest population of Latinx students are, but up in Oshkosh and Green Bay. And we just recently had some folks from Northeast Wisconsin reach out to us to join the network. So there is a real hunger for learning how to better serve Latinx students and navigate some really fraught issues related to diversity on college campuses, I think, especially now, right? So we're just really excited to be able to grow our network and to provide this forum for, connection and learning. Another thing is we didn't always have an infrastructure. It was just kind of this loose coalition of like-minded folks at the beginning. And a couple of years ago, we worked to create leadership positions and committees to make sure that the work keeps moving forward. There's like a sustainability plan. So that was really important. One of our biggest accomplishments, I'd say, is really just raising awareness and providing those educational opportunities for our community. We've had 2 major summits. The first was in 2020, right before the shutdown. And Gina, you remember how cold it was in February in Wisconsin?
Freezing.
You had to be our keynote that day. Yeah, we were just talking about that. And then again in 2021, we held a virtual summit with a focus on racial equity on college campuses. And both of these events attracted like hundreds of people. But really, and I think and we've talked about this already a lot, the bread and butter of the network is the connections that we've been able to make between our campuses. Um, HSI work and I think diversity work in general is often, really difficult and complex and sometimes exhausting. And so the folks in our network have been really great sources of information, but also really amazing sources of mutual support. One of our members recently referred to our meetings as therapy sessions because it's so affirming to know that other folks are encountering some of the same challenges and they're still finding their way forward. So we're constantly providing encouragement and advice. And again, as we've mentioned, I think a great added benefit is that we can connect our students to each other's campuses because we do feel very different niches, right? Just as a quick example, last week I had a Latina graduate student who needed another campus to do her summer practicum, and I reached out to the network. And within less than a day, there were three other colleagues from other campuses who were willing to explore this possibility with her. So the connections don't just benefit us, right? They're there for the students. And I think that, again, that bottom line is that HSI Now members are in this together. We're really collaborative partners who are focused on uplifting our community.
Yes, what a great experience to be able to have a network of people you can reach out to and be like, "Hey, I need help with this one thing," and know that people are going to respond.
Yeah. If I
Mhm,
could add one
mhm.
one little thing that it's, in my opinion, has come out of it too. It's um, for some time, Jackie and I have been working on really advancing resources and information pertaining our DACA and undocumented students, and I think through the network, I've been able to visit a handful of institutions to provide additional training because they're also really interested in serving that community of students. And so the network has been really has opened the door for me and the efforts of our task force here on campus to visit other institutions. And again, moving away from this competitive nature, but more so becoming a resource that we can all tap into each other's expertise.
Yeah, for sure. And as y'all are talking, I'm thinking about so there's an emergence of statewide like consortia coming on board, and the way y'all are talking about your network is like it even uses a different word, right? Network elicits a different feeling even, and it just feels different. So I'm starting to think about that too, as like what are the differences between these different ways we even bring together people, and to call it a network, right? Is and the way y'all are describing it is really powerful, right? Like we're gonna be here to support each other through this. Although so some of those like consortium, like that statewide consortium, they are getting funding from different private foundations. Yeah, so I have ideas as y'all are talking. I was like, ooh, let's figure out right how to get y'all even more elevated, right? Continue, and particularly since you mentioned, Jackie, that people are reaching out and want to be a part of the network. How do you get additional support for this work? Because I think there is. I think it exists for this kind of work because it's such a good model. So I love hearing about it. So, what are your future plans for HSI now, Alberto?
Um, well, I think some of them have been mentioned, but just to expand a little bit on that is, I think expanding our network. As you heard, we have grown by leaps and bounds in terms of a membership. I don't think it's over. I think we're going to continue to see institutions, and through word of mouth and through the work that we're doing, we're gonna engage with other colleagues throughout the state. And I see, and I hope that more members will join this, because it becomes uh, something that we all are looking at it from through the same lens of workforce development, building communities, building upon each other's efforts, learning from each other. The second thing I would say is the framework that Jackie mentioned earlier. We're at the cusp of finalizing a servingness framework document that we hope that we can take to our respective institutions and share with deans, with our chancellors, with other campus stakeholders, and really institutionalize a lot of the HSI practices that many of us have been doing for a while, uh, and take it to the next level, right? How do we help mitigate affordability? How do we increase our resources on campus? How do we bring allies into this work? Um, how do we create a framework that it's sustainable over the years and beyond our times and our positions, right? How do our institutions can really work through that framework to not only lift the Latinx students on campus, but having a blueprint that can be replicated for all communities of students on our campuses. I think that's at the core of why we are putting together the framework of Servingness, because it's applicable to not just Latinx students, it's applicable to all students of color, to white students, to all students on campus. And so I see it as a great service that we as a network can provide our own institutions. And then lastly, I would say collectively continue to educate and advocate for resources. There's a couple organizations that I can think of. HERA, which is the Higher Education Regional Alliance. It's a network or a group that encompasses all institutions of higher ed in the state of Wisconsin. And it's an organized body that is really looking at closing the achievement gap. And so we hope that we can establish, greater connections with them and inform a lot about the work that we're doing. We work consistently with the Hispanic Collaborative, which is another organization here in the city that is looking to really elevate the work around all Latinx communities, from workforce development to higher education, and really putting Milwaukee on the map when it comes to Latinx population. So working closely with them and really seeking other partners in this journey that would want to come closer to the work that we're doing and see how that develops over time. But those are three things that I could think of that really we see in our future. I mean, there's other things like websites that we're also in the process of creating. We have an education committee. We have other committees within the network that are really helping advance how we are put together as a network. And so it's exciting to see us going to work on the different fronts that are part of the network.
Absolutely. I'm over here thinking of all kind of ideas. First, I was thinking, okay, you could get this funded, right? Like a private funder, different foundations, particularly that are, a lot of foundations are like very regional focused, right? Like if you could find some like Wisconsin based, right, funders. But now I'm thinking also your legislators, right? Your statewide legislators, right? Getting them on board. So yeah, I got ideas for y'all. So let me know if you want to connect again, because I think you do have such a powerful network, right? And how do you keep expanding it, right? And getting more folks on board to keep pushing the work forward, because that's the reality, is it's going to have to continue on, even if y'all stop doing the work. Like you're going to want it to continue. So yeah, those are just a couple of my ideas I'm gonna throw on your future plans.
Please bring them on, bring them on, bring them on.
Funding, private foundations, state legislators. Those are the big ones I'm thinking right now. But awesome. Well, I definitely wanted to talk about the network. That was a big goal for this session or this episode of Que Pasa HSIs. But also, I want to hear about y'all's individual institutions, since y'all are in this emergent state and really trying to think about HSI strategically, very strategically, before you've even hit those numbers. So let's talk about University of Wisconsin Milwaukee. Alberto, if you want to just talk about your journey, what motivated this? Like, why does your campus want to be an HSI? What is your progress? Like, where'd you start? Where are you at? Where are you
Sure.
going? Mm-hmm.
Sure. Great question. Well, in my humble opinion, I have to say that our HSI work, when it was not called HSI work, began about 53 years ago when community and a handful of Latinx students in 1970, advocated and demanded that, a center or a place on campus needed to exist to serve the community and the students through bilingual services, through counseling, through recruitment efforts, to having a presence in the community. And so I have to mention that because that's kind of like the birth of our efforts. And immediately we saw once those students and community won that argument, and monies and resources were allocated on our campus for us to serve the Latinx community in a greater scale. Enrollment increase, and we started to see the fruits of that labor and the fruits of that advocacy. And so the Spanish Speaking Outreach Institute was the birth of that office. Fast forward to the early 90s, through other student efforts and faculty and community, it morphed into what it's called now the Roberto Hernández Center, in honor of Roberto Hernández, who was one of those 12 students that in 1970 advocated for the creation of the center. So I give you this sort of background to kind of set the stage for 2016, where now instead of community advocating and instead of activism and other things sort of manifesting, it came from the chancellor's office to say, I think this is something that we need to pay attention to, and we need to devote some energy and resources to begin to lift this work to a greater scale. And so in 2016 we were just under 10% of Latinx students at the undergraduate level here on campus, probably under maybe 1,900 students, a little bit more identified as Latinx. And just like Jacki said earlier, the study that was conducted, where we began to see the growth of the Latinx community here in Milwaukee, it gave us even more intel to say there's something here that we as an urban Research One institution, public in the heart of the city, we need to serve students, and we need to make sure that we are building the right partnerships in the community to not only intake this growth, but how do we help students persist? How do we help students graduate successfully? And who on campus can we lean on to help put together this work and really continue this work? And so immediately after that, I think just like the network was created, whoever was in that room that day with Chancellor Moni and others, and the provost and other stakeholders, director of admissions, we began sort of engaging others and identifying individuals on campus, and that's how our committee for Chancellor's Committee for Hispanic Serving Initiatives started on campus, and we never looked back. I was asked to serve as the lead of those efforts, and to convene a series of folks and meetings throughout the semesters and years to really create a vision for how we wanted to serve students. And it was immediately when we began to identify not only the opportunities, but also identify where we needed to do the greatest work. And that was in really helping students who were coming into the institution but were not persisting. And so it was quickly that we identified that Latinx students on campus were having the most challenge, and during their first 3 semesters, we began to identify 3 bucket areas: recruitment, retention, graduation, and also development of funds. And I think I credit a lot of this work. One could have been very discouraged from day one because he said, "Oh, we are at 10%. Are we ever going to reach the 25?" But it has been persistence and not giving up on this idea that it perhaps it's not about getting to that 25%, but it was about serving. It was about making sure that students, upon admissions, they were they were finding resources, that were finding an office that could take care of them. They were finding that there were multiple folks on campus that looked like them, that were serving them with intention. And so today we just learned this fall that we achieved the emerging status. We reached 15.2%, 0.2%.
Woo!
And so
Congratulations.
we've been able in the last 6-7 years grow about 5 percentage points. And that was partly the goal, but it was mainly to create the best practices and to identify practices that were going to indirectly help increase the number of students that entered, persisted, and graduated here from campus. So but I think one point of importance is it's when these efforts are not initiated by me personally or by a colleague on campus, but that they were initiated by our chancellor, and we having that sponsorship from your president or your chancellor on campus. I think it has helped us over the years to maintain the level of importance to the work, and to be able to bring others along and to go out into the community knowing that our highest leader on campus, it's behind this work, and that we can have that communication from day one and be able to engage in conversation and share some of the challenges, share some of the opportunities, but also share the gains that we're making with the chancellor and with the cabinet here on campus.
Absolutely. That leadership support matters. Thank you for bringing in the historical piece of like it started before with HSI with this center, this space that was created particularly for Latinx students. You're not the first person to say that, and probably not the last, right? And particularly people who are grounded in those spaces tend to say this is servingness. It's been servingness since before HSI was even a designation, right?
Yeah. And
And
again,
that's true.
I mean, looking back 53 years and starting with 12 Latinx students, and now to think that there's over 2,800 Latinx students on our campus is mind blowing. And but it's not by accident. It's because I think we collectively, and I say collectively because I think I have to credit the network too, and colleagues across the state, understanding the value added of our students on our campus, and not looking at only through the lens of enrollment, but looking at through the lens of, like Jacki mentioned before, if you serve them well, if you create the right conditions for your students, things are going to manifest. And I think what we're seeing here at UW Milwaukee is it's the we're collecting the fruits of that labor that began a long time ago, but that we have more recently sort of become more aware and more intentional about creating experiences, creating signature events that include language, that we're creating spaces that weren't available before, and that we are engaging deans. Just earlier today, I was talking to the dean of the School of Nursing, and she is so excited to come on board with this work, and she wants to do more, and she wants to come closer to all the things that we're doing. And I think that's part of that. It's really getting other folks to sort of drink the HSI Kool-Aid and, and come closer to what already is, not a perfect system, not a perfect set of events or initiatives, but one that has the potential to grow with the help of others.
Absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. Snaps to all of that. HSI Kool-Aid. Maybe we'll call it HSI Awas. like it has to have its own
See,
cultural piece. The fresca.
I would say the HSI coquito. I don't know if you had
Yes.
coquito.
Exactly. So we'll come up with our own cultural ways of drinking what we drink, which gets us into this work. So Jacki, same question. Tell us about Marquette's journey. Like, where did this come from? What motivated it, and what has been the journey so far?
Yeah, well, very similar to what happened at UW Milwaukee. There was that 2016 study, I think, was a big wake up call for a lot of our area institutions. And it was also a campus leader who initiated our efforts here. So at the time, the provost of Marquette was Dan Myers, and he was looking at the statistical portrait of our community, looking at the growth, looking at opportunities for the campus. And he went on, this is a story that not a lot of people know, but he went on an Ignatian leadership retreat. And it's a program, the Ignatian Colleagues Program, that happens across Jesuit institutions for Jesuit leaders. And so they go through these programs and they go on a retreat, and they have to come up with, like, what's your action plan? What's your what's your goal that's coming out of this kind of long period of meditation and discernment? And what he decided was, like, we're a Jesuit institution in the heart of Marquette, of Milwaukee, with this huge growing population, and we're not doing enough really to engage them, to connect with them, to get them to our campus, to be culturally responsive and linguistically responsive. And so he came back from this retreat and he was like, we got to do better in terms of like connecting to our mission. So it was really for him like a mission related impetus. And so he got folks on board. He got community members together. He got a town hall going. He talked to the board. He talked to his other campus leaders, and he got folks excited about this idea of, like, what if we were to become a Hispanic serving institution? And again, at the time, Wisconsin didn't have any of these. So this was like a brand new thing. So when he got the green light, my position was created to help steward the effort. And it, very much like Alberto too, in that first year, I spent a lot of time, like talking to folks across campus, like kind of thinking strategically. In my case, because I didn't know the campus or higher ed very well, I had to get to know what was already happening, getting to know the students, reaching out to colleagues at other campuses, reading the scholarship out there, convening a steering committee. And we put together at the end of that first year this giant report that said, hey, I know you're thinking about increasing Latinx enrollment, which is obviously very important, but there's a whole lot of other things we should be thinking about. How are we engaging the community? Do we have access to information in Spanish? What supports are in place for dreamers? What does our coursework look like? Are we offering culturally responsive courses? What about alumni? How are we engaging Latinx alums? There was a lot of great work already happening that we could build on, but there was, and really, I think still is, a lot more work to do to get to a place where we're like really truly embodying that ethos of servingness. So my role has been to engage in some of that work directly, but also to help the university think very strategically about ways that we can improve. But also, like Alberto, we have like these parallel things happening in our campuses. When we started our HSI effort, we were less than 10% Latinx. And within 5 years, we got to that emerging status.
Yes, 1% a year is what I think about. I'm like, if you could do 1% a year increase, that's about average, right? But if you start at 10%, you're like, 15 years we gotta do this? And y'all have stayed in it. I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah. No, and Gina, I think something that Jacki mentioned that I think it's of great value is really putting in paper these recommendations and
Mhm.
coming together as committees, as organized bodies within our institutions. I think I credit a lot of our success and our persistence as colleagues continuing this work, because one can be very quickly discouraged from continuing, with people transitioning or leadership changing. Being very persistent with these efforts, it's key. And I think documenting that and really digging into data, digging into the unique needs of our institutions, making recommendations based on work that you yourself have really put together over the years in your books and your research. Bringing a lot of that information closer to administration has been extremely important. And lastly, community, the role of community, forming these sort of advisory committees from community, so they from a different perspective and from a place of being in the community can tell us, are we on to something, are we missing something, and really taking into consideration all stakeholders, both on campus, our students, right, the most important asset that we have, and the ones who we are working to help and advance. But yeah, bringing all those pieces together and really documenting and presenting those every so often to administration has been extremely valuable, and getting their reactions. Seeing where we need to scale back, where we need to put more energy into, and then lastly bringing them closer. I can think of many instances. I call upon a vice chancellor, my boss, Dr. Chia Vang, or Chancellor Moni, to come to our events and to be present. And I think you can only achieve that once you've added, all these elements, and really giving this effort the value and attention that it needs to advance and to be sustained over time.
Absolutely. I think there's so much like y'all already. I'm like, oh, I had all these questions, but then y'all are like filling it all, a lot of it in too, right? It's like, yes, this is like the collective movement, getting leadership on board, getting community on board, right? Like different kind of folks. One thing I do want to ask though specifically that is not in the Servingness framework, which is the actual recruitment piece. And I think the way I justify why that wasn't originally in the framework is that HSI was always enrolled already after you are the 25% enrollment, right? But I work with campuses like y'all, the HSI now obviously many striving, emerging, my own campus, UC Berkeley, at this emerging state, UCLA, right? Like these different campuses that I see really trying to figure out how do you even just get to the enrollment, right? The 25%. And it makes me think, well, that's part of Servingness, right? It just wasn't originally because we were thinking about people that were already there. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the intentional sort of efforts y'all have made and thinking about, there are a lot of people that are trying to figure this out. Y'all are not the only ones, but I think y'all have come up with solutions. So Jacki, if you want to jump in, talk to me about even working with like outreach and recruitment, right? Like your admissions folks on campus, community, families, language. I know all that comes in. So that's the question. It's broad,
Yeah,
but I know you have a lot
absolutely.
to think about.
Yeah, so it's so interesting that you say that recruitment is part of Servingness, because, and I don't know, folks don't know this, but Gina is on my dissertation committee, which I'm defending next month. And one of the major,
As a quick addendum to this episode of Que Pasa HSIs, I would like to note that Jacki did successfully defend her dissertation on February 13th, 2024, making her Dr. Jacki Black. It was such an honor to be a part of her dissertation committee, and she did a phenomenal study about HSIs and Servingness.
I also love talking about recruitment at Marquette, even though I'm not primarily in the area of admissions, because I am a huge fan of our admissions team and our Dean of Undergrad Admissions, Brian Troyer. I think they've done so much to think very strategically and creatively about how they can recruit talented and diverse students to our campus. And every year they break their own records for the most diverse class in our history. So I think the greatest strength of our admissions team is the personal touch that they provide for prospective students and families. So as a Jesuit institution, we have this Latin saying, cura personalis, which means care for the whole person. And this is something we take very seriously as part of who we are. And it comes through in those personal connections. But if you're talking more like enrollment strategies, I can tell you from working with our admissions team that there's so much that goes on. Marquette has both a local focus and a national reach. And What I mean by that is that our admissions counselors go out and recruit across the country, and there's a lot of data crunching that goes into where they focus their efforts to make sure that they're connecting with high achieving diverse students. We also have connections to national networks like the Cristo Rey schools, for example. We have articulation agreements with Latinx serving community colleges across the country. But we also have a lot of love for our local community here in Milwaukee because we just have so much talent right here. So our admissions office spends a lot of time building relationships with local schools. They do things like on-site admissions for a lot of schools that have high percentages of first-gen students, which means that they're able to provide students on the spot with an admissions decision. They also have a lot of great partnerships with local community-based organizations. I know this is a thread that keeps coming up over and over again, but it's so important. They work with orgs like All in Milwaukee, Mexican Fiesta, College Possible, Boys and Girls Club, just to name a few. And what this has done is help to connect those students to campus resources early. And in particular, it's provided them with pathways to some of our major scholarship programs. We're very proud to host the nation's first educational opportunity program on our campus. It's more than 50 years old, and it serves hundreds of students in the college division each year. It gives additional financial aid and access to other support. We also have urban scholars, Berk scholars, Opus engineering scholars, all of these full tuition programs that also provide like additional support for students and built-in like sense of community, right? So there's a ton going on to help us meet our diversity enrollment goals.
Yes, absolutely. Ooh, I look forward to reading your dissertation about the importance, right? But I think about it a lot of time. I'm like, it is nowhere in the Servingness framework, but what an important piece for campuses that are really emerging, right into that emerging state. So yeah, there's a big hole in the research, I think, around that, right? And the importance of recruitment. So let's hear about what y'all are doing, Alberto. I know y'all are doing a lot.
Milwaukee. Yeah.
Yeah. In Milwaukee,
Uh,
yes. Go ahead and tell us about that.
well, one thing that I have to note is, and what people know about me is that I'm all in with these things. Jacki knows me, and I drank the recruitment punch a long time ago. I was at one point in my career the assistant director of admissions, and at that time, it was when all these things are sort of manifesting. 2016, I joined the team in admissions in 2011. I began to take a pulse on this growth that sort of internally was sort of brewing. And by 2016, we then went ahead and expressed our interest in becoming a Hispanic serving. But even before that, we had started an effort to host families and students here on campus through a program called Casa Abierta. And just in a couple of weeks, Saturday, the 27th, we'll be hosting our 10th annual Casa Abierta. It's mind blowing to think that 10 years have gone by, but it's awesome work, and it's part of that servingness piece and really identifying where the needs are and what type of intentional programming we ought to be doing. And Casa Abierta is not unique to just UW Milwaukee. I know Marquette does programming similar to that. I think it's Mi Casa es Tu Casa, right, Jacki?
Yeah, we're changing the name this year. It's going to be Somos Marquette. But yes, we've been doing Mi Casa for many years.
Yeah, and other institutions that are part of this network are also have engaged in similar work. But I'm most proud of that because it was something I helped jumpstart many years ago, and it's still something that continues to serve our community. We're very unique in which we welcome all our families with a 40-piece mariachi group to our campus. So at 7:30 in the morning, they're being serenaded by a full mariachi through one of our partnerships in the community. But Jacki's right. Servingness. When we talk about servingness, recruitment is at the heart of that, and intentional recruitment, not predatory recruitment. It's not about how many shiny, view books you have and things like that, but it's about building relationships. And so we've been able to forge amazing relationships with community, with target, with schools in the community, and really providing, the services like the on-site admissions, the field trips to campus for families and students to experience what campus looks like, what campus feels like. And I'm in a very, very uh, I would say privileged position to be at the Roberto Hernández Center, because uh, we're often engaged in a lot of these practices and a lot of these things that are engaging with families and students. um, but I think another great thing is that it's not just unique to the Roberto Hernández Center that, oh, there's Latino students on campus, let's get the Roberto Hernández Center involved. Now it's a conversation about how the Office of Admissions is treating this. And I'm holding right now in my hand our CCHSI recruitment plan for 2024, and it's been constructed by a collective of folks: the director of admissions, the associate director, other campus stakeholders are now um, putting this into practice, and not just something Alberto came up with, but it's more partners coming on board and really leading that work. All the things that we're currently doing that I really at the heart of this recruitment piece is um, the follow up and reach out to students. Right. There's something that it's nationally known as summer melt, when students, graduate high school and lose that connection to their counselors or to their school. Um, we we we've been putting a lot of energy into connecting with students to make sure that they and their families are navigating those processes well. We do bilingual orientation for parents. It was something that it was unknown, but we realized that many students weren't coming to freshman orientation, because their parents did not see a place for them. So we now hold full Spanish orientation for families, doing 3 times during the summer. We do a bienvenida program for new students, because we realize that students may go to orientation and it's great value, but from the time they have orientation for the time they actually arrive on campus, they lose contact. So we wanted to really intentionally connect with students to welcome them, connect them with resources. We say that we at least wanted students to have 5 touch points before they came to campus post admission. So those are things that are yielding great results. Students feel more connected. They know where to go. They know where the admissions office is. They know where financial aid is. They know where their classes are located. And I think little by little, what the end result is that we now have many partners on campus on board, that is not one single individual lifting this work, but that people continue to understand and value partnerships. They understand that you know serving students with compassion, with intentionality, really goes a long way. So we're super proud of the partnership we've been able to build with admissions, with financial aid, having bilingual staff present at a lot of our events. Having those connections with families. Really talking about what tuition is like, what affordability is like, what housing is like. Those things go really, really a long way. And I cannot be more grateful for the work that's been sort of happening and here on our campus.
All right, you heard it here. Recruitment has got to be part of your servingness. The interesting thing with COVID and post-COVID times is even campuses that were HSIs have dropped below. So recruitment has even become a really bigger conversation for even campuses that had thought they had already arrived. So it's like it has to be an ongoing conversation, particularly that even if you're at that hovering point, you can't just be like, hey, we're done, right? We've done all this work. So glad y'all were able to talk about that. Jacki, I know you wanted to talk about students as well. How have you engaged your students in some of this work?
So, in a formal sense, we've definitely engaged students in our HSI initiatives. For example, I have student representatives, both undergrad and graduate, on our HSI steering committee. Periodically, we'll do focus groups with students, things like that. So, of course, I think it's really important to make sure students have a seat at the table when it comes to advisory bodies like that. But I think it's really just important to recognize the ways that students are carrying the everyday servingness efforts on our campus. And this was something also that I've learned in my time here at Marquette. I don't want to minimize the work that our faculty and staff do because they do a lot. But sometimes I think the contributions that our students make toward HSI efforts get overlooked. Students are our Spanish speaking tour guides. There are community ambassadors who go back out into local schools and talk to students about how to navigate the pathway toward higher ed. They speak on panels in our Somos Marquette program for admitted students. They speak at the Spanish speaking orientation. They're mentors in our Encuentros program, which is a partnership between our school, between Marquette and Cristo Rey Jesuit High School. It's like a mentorship program. They're leaders in our student organizations, our Latin American Student Organization, our Marquette Dreamers, our Betas, our Gammas. They're the ones creating community, right, amongst the students. They're the resident assistants in the Nuestro Hogar Living Learning community in our dorms. They are ultimately the ones who are really on the front lines, I think, of creating culture change on our campus. And they're the ones reaching back and helping those who come after navigate our campus. I mean, heck, if you call the main Marquette phone number today and you hear oprima tres para español, if you press 3, you know who you will be talking to. You'd be talking to a student. So I think without our students, there really wouldn't be an HSI initiative at Marquette. And so I think I just wanted to highlight that as a really, really key piece of this effort.
Yes. Alberto, anything to add? So you were
Yeah,
shaking your head like, yep, we do that too.
no. Students are at the heart of so many things. They are, they energize me. They energize my staff here at the Centro. And to Jacki's point, there would not be an HSI effort on our campus if it wasn't for the energy and aspirational thinking that these students bring, right? These are students who on our campus, for the most part, 85% of the nearly 3,000 students commute to campus. They live at home, so they're from this community, so they have very unique needs. And I think what I see sort of happening on a semester basis is them coming together, understanding, supporting each other, really telling us what are their needs, telling us what sort of spaces they want us to create for them, how they want us to engage with them. One of the things that our center since 2018 has begun to do is adopt this model of coaching. We have academic advising, but we also have coaching, and coaching has to do with the caring for the entire student. And so, I think through that work, we've been able to discover not only the needs that our students have, but about their strengths and about what they bring. We support a lot of student orgs, like Jacki mentioned. We have the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. We have Latinx Student Union, and these students are so eager to do different things, and that's what keeps us motivated to build upon the work that's already there. If it's an event, a study night, or a FAFSA help night, or dedicating spaces and time to really provide scholarship information and things like that. All those are greatly informed by students and by efforts that they are themselves initiating on our campus, and we are there to really scale it and support it along the way. So much credit to my staff, Gabi, Fernanda, for the coaching work they do. They serve an amazing amount of students, but they do it with such passion that it really helps us identify, what students need, but also what are their aspirations, and then I can go to work on their behalf. I can go and advocate for resources. I can go across campus and say, hey, this is what our students need. This is what they're looking to do within other parts of campus, and uh, I don't mind doing that. It's fun. It's energizing, to know that we can change lives, and that those changes are informed by our students, and but what they need and what they want to aspire to be, right?
Yes, absolutely. Servingness conversations should include students, but y'all just gave so many examples of like, they've already been doing servingness, right? How do you bring them into this framework when they're already a part of a lot of these efforts you're talking about, anyways. So thank you for that. Well, unfortunately, we're coming up on our end of our time together, but you can't get out of the pod without answering the final question. Final question is the easy question, I think. ¿Qué pasa, HSI? Jacki, you want to go first?
Sure. So I think I'll direct my Que Pasa answer to those institutions out there like ours that are emerging HSIs or strivers. Um, you know, Sometimes the road can feel long and winding. Sometimes it feels like challenges are insurmountable or two steps forward, one step back. But I think it's important to know that HSI can be about large scale campus wide transformation, but it can also be about like the infinite little ways that the work you do supports students. So I would say keep fighting for the big changes, but don't discount all the little wins. And when you're feeling burnt out, my advice would be to form your own network of support, whether that be on campus or maybe at other campuses that are also in transition, because there's a lot of us out here and we're in this together.
Yes. Alberto, ¿qué pasa, HSIs?
¿Qué pasa, HSI? This is great work, and I don't say that, just for the sake of saying it, but this is coming to this work with a lot of ideas, a lot of energy to really change the lives of students. I know my colleagues are too. I think for those listening to the podcast, who are again um, are creating ideas, are formulating ideas, and trying to build their own given networks, know that there's power in really sharing and persisting, right? I think I mentioned earlier, it's easy to give up and to see becoming an HSI this distant goal, but just focus on the quick wins, on the things that you have the potential to change, and build upon that, right? Really be a friend of data, you know utilize data that exists in your campus, because it is through data that you can discover opportunities. Yes, you can inform some of the challenges, but I think it could help bring a lot of things to fruition, right? A lot of ideas. You can use that to inform your practices and things like that. So be a friend of data. Don't be afraid of diving into the numbers and looking at historical things. Always take a pulse on your students. Always. They're the biggest asset that we have on our campuses. They're the ones that are so ever changing. There's some basic things, some basic needs out there, but there's a lot of things that our young people are facing these days that perhaps myself didn't have to deal with, 30 years ago. And there's some similar things. So always, create spaces for students to give feedback, to tell you what's going on, what's up, and follow through, right? Follow through with them, and don't discount families. Our familias are also a huge asset in the decision making process of our young people. They're eager to learn, they're eager to help, and when it comes to retention and graduation, they're one of our biggest assets, because the more they know about the college process, the more they're going to be able to support our students in collaboration with us. So and just continue being you know uh, uh, dreamers for these kids. Keep dreaming about the possibilities, and knock on doors. I've knocked on many doors here on our campus. When it came to marketing, I said, we ought to do a commercial in Spanish on Telemundo, and I think I knocked on that door for quite some time, and it eventually happened, and it was a great thing. And I've been able to convince folks, little by little, but just be persistent. There's great people on our campuses. Sometimes we just need to make the effort to come close to them. So I'll leave you with that. Muchísimas gracias.
Awesome. Gracias. Thank you both for being here today on Que Pasa HSI.
Thank you so much.